All right, we're gonna call the general government committee meeting to order. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So move. Second.
Any discussion on the agenda? Not all's in favor,
Aye.
carries. How about our minutes from our November 13th meeting?
I'll move to approve the minutes. Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Not all's in favor,
Aye.
carries. Are there any public comments? All right. Are there any supervisors not seated as committee members that have any information for this committee? No? All right, we'll have an update from the investment committee.
I can handle that. Is there, could we get the PowerPoint up on the screen? So just minutes before this meeting, the investment committee met. And we discussed the fact that we now have a policy in place to guide what we do. First voted on by the investment committee, then by the general government committee, this body, and then approved by the board. So we're fully functional now. We've got about $31 million under management, and it's a good time to be investing. The rates are favorable. And so what we're looking to do is to take instruments as they mature and have them planned out so that we get access to money each quarter for perpetuity. So we've had some situations in the past where we've gotten big piles of money all at once and then invested it all at once. And so we didn't have that nice ladder. We had a lot coming to maturity at the same time. And the problem with that, it's great if the rates are favorable. It's not so great if the rates aren't favorable. So we're trying to sort of smooth out our investment curve. And it is a decent time. For instance, right now we have about $3.5 million in T-bills that will be maturing soon. And they're all at about 3%. The rates are over 5%. So that's going to help us. We also have about $1 million in short-term CDs coming available relatively soon. And we'll be bidding those out through our investment advisor. And we'll be looking not only for the best rates nationally, but we'll also be looking to see what local banks have. So that's kind of the plan. Let's ladder these investments out, remain liquid, get great rates, and sort of smooth our cash flow. And that general strategy was just ratified by the investment committee a few minutes ago. Any questions on that?
Do you have dates for the 1 million in the short-term CDs that
Sure,
those
I
expire?
can get those to you. In fact, I can give you a packet that's got it right here. And I can make these available to everyone. There's sort of a list. It's microscopic. And it's, yeah, I will be happy to provide that in an Excel file if that would help. Supervisor Hall, so.
Anything else?
Good with me. I would
All right, are you giving us the update on the wage study?
Yes, sir. I'll just stand right here if that's okay. So. But it'd be good to update the committee on what's going on with the wage study. We are in the process of working with our consultant on the final report. And there may be one more version of this that you'll get, but this is kind of an update. So first, I'd like to talk about what's been accomplished so far. So we started this back in spring. It's been 6 to 9 month process, and it hasn't all been about dollars and employees' paychecks. It's also been about reforming what's called the grade classification. It's every job in the county, not employee, but every job in the county, what level that job is and what that job category pays. So we updated the grade classification system. The old system had 14 grades or levels in it. The new one has 20. So why would we add grades? It's because we were dealing with some compression where there wasn't quite enough salary room amongst and between those 14. We put some more grades in, we have a little more flexibility. So that grade classification was a big part of this. The other part was the wages. So if you think about a grid in your mind and you've got all of these jobs by grade classification, and you've also got the minimum, the market point or control point, and then the maximum. So you want all of the employees' actual salaries to fall somewhere between the minimum and the maximum ideally. And you want to understand what that market rate is, because if you don't know what the market rate is, you may or may not be competitive. What the consultant showed us is over time, our minimums had lagged. So they were getting further and further away from market. And people that were hired relatively recently, even with the COLA, the cost of living adjustments, we could never really catch up. So that was the fundamental finding about our wages here in the county. So what are we going to do about that? Well, the first thing we're going to do is move the minimum up so that it actually is representative of what an entry-level job in that pay band should pay, given our 5 competitive counties. That's the first thing we did. Then we have to think about, I'm actually on the next slide at this point. Next thing we need, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make, okay, we need to make some equity adjustments now. So within a band, we move that minimum up. If someone started 3 years ago, when we moved the minimum up, the person that started yesterday is now making what that person that was here for 3 years is making. So we inch those people that are making 3, 4, 5, and 6, or had been here 3, 4, 5, and 6 years up a bit. That's called an equity adjustment. We also looked at folks that were over the maximum. Now, we want to retain those folks, but if they're already over the maximum, we don't want to be making major changes to their salary, or they'll never be on the grid. Remember, one of the fundamental concepts is we want all of the employee salaries to be between the minimum and the maximum. So what we did for those employees is we're giving them a non-compounding bonus. So it's just a one-time payment, an acknowledgement of their service. It doesn't compound. So next year, if they're still over the max, they'll get another one of these, assuming that everything works like we'd like it to. At some point, if you continue to do that, they'll be back on the grid. They've been making a little bit, proportionally a little bit less than others. They're going to get inched back onto the grid. So that's what we did for this other class of employees. The last move was the everybody else move. If you weren't at the minimum or subjected to that equity increase or above the maximum, you've got 5%. What was our rationale behind 5%? Cost of living of 3%, step increase of 2, put them together, you get 5%. So that's how all of the jobs and all the employees were in the county, one of those 4 categories. Any questions about that?
So before this, where that's a new max, did we technically not have?
We have a
people-
new max, new market point, sorry, new minimum, I'll go this direction, new minimum, new market point, control point, new max.
Did we technically previously not have people above the max then before?
We had the max and we had a special category, and it was just called special category. And a lot more of our employees were in that band than are now. I think there's only 2 or 3 employees that are now over the max that need to be kind of, I'd say, reeled back in, but these one-time bonuses apply to.
And that just takes time then, right?
Yeah. So, no good deed goes unpunished. We have certainly had employees come forward that are concerned. I can assure you that no one that got their salary boosted from the minimum up, that has a new minimum, has complained. And I would say we haven't had many complaints from folks that have had increases. We've had concerns by employees who have been here a while and got that 5%. Now, there's sort of 2 ways of looking at this. You could say bad on the county for years and years, our minimums weren't high enough. We brought people in at a wage that was too low. All we're doing is correcting that. So that, you know, one view is that was a really good thing to do. We corrected a mistake. The other view, and we've heard this, is, well, those people got a bigger percentage raise than I did. Well, that's right, they did, because we had made a mistake not bringing that minimum up in years past. So we are subjected to that criticism. We are subject to that criticism. We've certainly heard it. This is one of those things where we're not going to make everyone happy. And our goal was to correct past mistakes and make us market competitive now. And I think we've already got some indications that that's working. We've seen in a couple of job categories dramatically more applications recently than we had in the past. That's a good sign. And these are important roles. Some are in law enforcement. So we think that we've done the right thing strategically. Are we subject to some criticism? We certainly are. No doubt about that.
And what was the cost to do this?
The overall cost to do this,
You mean the study, or do you mean?
No.
No, how much- what was the
Study
wage
and the
increase?
people that moved and what's
Yeah,
the cost?
I'm looking at my team back there.
When
thank
we
you.
looked at the costing sheet, it was the 1.3,
Yeah,
but I don't know the
think
total
was one time.
overall.
But what that doesn't take into account, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is the reimbursements we get from.
Yeah, there's some, and we've got the CSD director in the back, you know, when we increase our wages for certain categories of employees, we can charge more back. And we actually don't take that into consideration when we're doing our budget. But, you know, I think our plug number was about $1.5 million. And if we were at 1.3, that's good. If we're a little above that, that's, you know, not surprising that we would be, but we can get that exact number. What we're doing right now, the final report hasn't come out, but our finance team is working on putting in all of the new salaries that we know are solid into before January 1, when people have to be paid these new wages. So they're working on that right now. We'll have a final number on that soon.
For the, and I know you said it's a small number of people, but for the people who are above the max now and are getting that 5%. Well, I guess for one thing, just to clarify, so if I'm making 100,000, I'm getting a $5,000 basically annual bonus at that point.
Well, it wouldn't be the money's right, but we wouldn't categorize it as a bonus. We'd say in our old model, it'd be a 3% COLA and then a 2% acknowledgement of your service. So
He's asking about the folks who are over the max.
Can I answer
no, I'm
that?
sorry. Did you say over the max?
Yeah.
Okay, I just thought you said 100,000. No, if they're over the max, they get a couple percent, right?
Yeah, so
Is it one-time
the
bonus?
base wage doesn't change. They would get a lump sum bonus of 2%, which is considered the merit.
Okay.
So anytime that somebody is above the max, they'd only be eligible for merit, not a COLA increase.
So 2%.
Yeah, so if
So
they
it's
were
just a
making,
2% increase.
So if I'm over the
lump sum.
max and making 100,000, I'm gonna get a $2,000.
right,
And
it
then-
won't compound. Your salary will stay 2,000 next year. If we do the same thing, it was 2%. You get another
And
2,000.
just trying to get the lay of the land for those people, and I know you said it's a very small number, so maybe we don't need to spend a lot of time on that, but for those people in positions like that, are there comparable positions in other counties, and are we?
Oh, for sure. So
competitive in that way?
the reason we have a new max is because the consultant was able to determine what a similar role would be paying and whether we were on market with that maximum or not. No doubt about that.
And then long-term, and I don't know how long that would be then, is there flexibility to move out of that? Because eventually, you know, this would kind of stagnate.
We will need to refresh the wage study periodically. That was one of the problems, is it been way before anybody that's sitting back in this room, 7 or 8 years since there was a wage study.
Yeah, this all seems new, needed.
Yeah,
Can I speak to that just a little bit? So the recommendation from the consultant is that annually we do a wage analysis. So we look at key positions and ensure that we're still within the market. And then every 3 years, we would do a full wage study.
Right.
And then with that, we're partnering with that consultant group to make sure that we grade jobs appropriately if we do have to create new positions. And then if we have any fluxes in the market, similar to what corrections is seeing right now,
Yeah.
we would do that wage analysis on that key area. to
Right,
make
because
sure
I'm
we
just
stay
putting
competitive.
myself in the shoes of that theoretical person now of if I'm being told, but, you know, in a few years when your salary has, you know, reached a point where it
You
could
can't
use an actual increase, you know, we're open.
So annually, the whole scale would change. So it doesn't stay
Oh.
the same every single year. I think I understand what you're asking now.
It moves with the
So it
COLA.
moves
moves with
with
the
the
COLA.
cost of
Okay.
living.
Got it.
I realized I skipped over this title part. We did, yeah. One more up.
Correct.
Right there, titles. So we did have some title changes. And we also had some title recommendations that we didn't act on. But for comparability, it's useful if the title in the county here matches the county title in St. Croix for the same work. So the consultant also provided us with input around that. And I don't know the total number of title changes that we made. It's a relatively small number, but some people did get grumpy about it. I'll give you an example. So we're trying to move to a system where within certain bands, we use the same modifiers to describe sort of levels. So we might have technician, specialist, generalist. And if we switch those things around on an employee felt like, oh, I was a specialist and now I'm a technician, then that can create challenges for that person can feel like they were slighted. That can happen. But what we're doing is we're looking at the external market and seeing how those positions are called in other counties and getting us as in alignment as we possibly can. And so we've had some people that have expressed concern about that. And our response is, well, the work that you do is called specialist in these 5 other counties. So that's what we're going to call it from now on. So we've got some grumpy people about that. Not a ton, but some. Okay. We got one more slide. One couple on which I guess. So let's go to the graph. Next slide. Yep. Okay, so you know, for the 400 or whatever FTEs in the county, not including GAM, not including deputies, about half got that 5% increase. About 35% were in that equity where the person coming in with a new minimum, feeling a little close, let's bump you up a little bit. About a little bit over a third of the employee base was in that category. 16% were moved with a new minimum. And then this is like 1 or 2% that were at, I mean, it's actually less than 1%. It's just won't even show up on the graph. Those are folks that are at the max or over it. That helpful. So the folks in this pile got more than 5%. The folks in this pile got more than 5%. These folks got 5, and these got that 2%. Any questions about that? All right, last slide on wage. So the consultant works with a number of the counties that are right around us, not just us. They've worked with Barron, they're working with St. Croix. There's a couple more they work with, Donner, Barron. They really understand our market. And they told us a lot about our grade scale and about our wages, but they also told us a lot about other parts of the compensation package. They were very clear that we have a muddled health plan. We have 2 traditional plans, and they're so close together that it doesn't, they were wondering, why do we have 2? I mean, they're really so close, they lay right on top of one another. And they recommended in the future, pare down to 1. Our high deductible plan, they say, is not particularly compelling. So the reason to have a high deductible plan is you're incentivizing people to stay healthy by giving them some money and lowering their rate. The idea is if you do that and they do all the stuff that's aligned with good health, they won't cost you as much and you'll reward them for that. Our high deductible plan is kind of laid on top of plan A and B, the 2 traditional plans. They said separate that more. We're not doing those things this year, but we'll be talking with our consultant, J.A. Counter, in the spring as an executive committee to get some recommendations on that. So in the future general government committee meeting, you may hear about changes to health plans that are like, we got rid of Plan B. I'm not saying we're doing that. Got rid of Plan B and we put more incentives around high deductible. You could hear that. They also told us that the flexibility we provide to employees through PTO is not favorable relative to our competition. So they gave us some options for that, and we'll be discussing those. And there may be some discussion about ways we can improve the level of PTO that we provide, or other ways to allow for flexibility for employees. They also talked about our non-wage pay is not competitive. So that'd be deferred compensation and other tools like that. We're not addressing those in 2020, not planning to address them directly in 2024. We're going to be doing the planning in 2024 around those topics. Any questions about that?
Less of a question, more of a comment. Like, I've read multiple things over the years now, how more generous PTO packages can often, and I'm not saying this is always the case, but there's a good thing that we're talking about it, because a generous PTO package can mean somebody feels good that they have it and it's available, and they're not always utilizing it. Like, it's a psychological thing. Like, they're not always maxing out their PTO taken, but they feel great that it's there. It's interesting.
And I think the HR director could comment on, first thing people ask, how much am I going to get paid? The second thing is, what's the PTO package look like?
Yeah.
They're not reversed, but those are always the first two questions.
It just provides like a psychological buffer of like, okay, thank God, I don't need to feel strapped on this.
And there's a lot of questions around volunteer time. That's one that's recently come up a lot.
What did you say, volunteer?
Volunteer time. So utilizing these banks to kind of help cover all of those aspects is something that Don and I have talked about. So good information that we got from this study, very good information.
One of the supervisors that's not on this committee asked to be updated on the wage study. And our thought was to provide something like this, if the full board would like to hear it, once the wage study report is finalized. Just for sort of level setting, and also because you may get some calls, so you're equipped if you get the calls. And I'd be happy to do that. I'm sure Kim would be happy to do it as well. So that's something for the board to decide overall, but we're just available to do it.
So does the county have a policy? Or did the policy end like when the unions ended?
We have a
Because it
personnel policy.
doesn't seem like the board has had any input in when they started cutting wages at the entry level and how people were paid. And then all we would do is hear how hard it was to hire and retain. So if we reached a point where to hire and retain, this has to be done. I don't think the board's had any involvement in it that I'm aware of.
I think the Act 10 combined with switching from an administrative coordinator to an administrator form of county government kind of happened,
Yeah, about the same time.
and I think that's the reason that the board hasn't had more of a hand in that kind of thing. It was really up to the administrator to say, hey, county board, we need to do a wage study. And that happened once, I think, when Andrea was still here in all of the years that I've been here, and I've been here since '06. So it was clearly time again, but I think the plan in place with
Board, this was incorporated into the annual budget, the recommendations and the increases to balance the budget. When the board approves the budget, the new wage and systems are in that compensation for the board to approve.
When we had, oh, sorry,
No, I
sorry.
was just gonna say, I think it'd be a reasonable request when we're reviewing financial policy and personnel policy to get an update on where things are with the workforce. And we'd be happy to provide that, so. On an annual basis or however often the general government committee want to see it or the board want to see it. Favorable on that.
Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Well, I don't know what I'm getting at. I mean, it's just, when we used to negotiate, it was comparable.
Mhm.
That's how you settle contracts. I mean, you had to be comparable
Mhm.
with other counties. Well, when the Act 10 broke the unions, all of a sudden, like, we're out.
And when, like
The
I said, we
board's
switched our
out.
model and.
Yeah, and then now it's all internal on how much they're paying the top, the middle. And we have no say. We
But this-
used to yay or nay the contracts. I'm just saying, is there a policy? Do we have a policy where, like the board says, we're going to be competitive with our comparable counties? So keep us competitive.
So there's instructions in the financial policy about what our comparison counties are. There's no statement about remaining competitive. But I think if I could, and I'm not an attorney, the general idea would be if you're looking at what the other counties are doing, you're at least aware of whether you're falling behind, getting ahead. And as a practice, we could do what Kim just described, which is annually look at key positions and every 3 years, do a wage study. And you could hold us to that. Or if you did like the timing, you could do something different.
I just want to help what you're talking about. In the personnel policy, it does state that we have to do a wage analysis. I don't know if that helps kind of address that. And it does list out specific counties, but it talks about just the wage analysis. We'd like to strengthen that more, and that's something Don and I are working on, is to include the recommendation from the consultant to make sure we're doing the wage study also. So previously, it was just kind of key positions that were showing recruitment struggles. We want to strengthen that policy and include the recommendations from McGrath.
That particular policy is in the personnel, it directs the general government to look at certain counties when it's challenging to hire a position, but it's very much spot. You know, it's like point in time, you need to solve a
Yeah.
problem is around one position, do this. So it's not very comprehensive.
Both of those policies are also be coming back through committee now in the beginning of the year, both financial policy and the personnel policy. So if there's language that the committees would like to add to those to ensure that they're involved and see these numbers. They'll be coming through the committees here shortly.
I also think because there had been such a lapse in the last time that we did a wage study, this is gonna be the hardest one or the most impactful. Hopefully, as long as we're trying to maintain and doing something every 3 years, they're gonna be a lot less growing pains with those future ones,
Not gonna get so far behind.
right?
Right.
So historically, what I've found is that the last true wage study was 7 years ago for the county. So it's a huge chunk of time with the changes in the economy in the last few years. So this team has put a lot of effort into making sure we don't do that again.
Coming out of Act 10, it was,
Yeah,
was a
and a
tough
lot of changes were made after Act 10
yes.
to starting wages and
They just didn't do that.
All right, just-
Anything else?
That was the Matrix one. It's the first step matrix
Good.
one.
All right, we got a couple of labor agreements that are gonna go to
It was the first step matrix.
county board if we send them there, I guess. Might as well have them together. They're 49-23 and 50-23. Anybody wanna move them to the,
I'll make a motion
we should move them with the recommendation, I would think.
to move resolution number 49-23 and number 50-23 with approval to the county board
With recommendation,
with recommendation of approval.
I'll second.
Any discussion? I don't know if everybody was at negotiation, so they're up to speed on what,
I was at the first, but not the second.
can we say anything about it? mean, it's,
Absolutely.
all right, can you give a little? What did we, I mean, we got a wage increase. Insurance, there's a little tweak on insurance that we weren't getting, they weren't paying what they were by contract. And we're gonna get it closer. I don't know if we're getting it 100%.
Right, that
Backward.
we're,
Moving to get that done.
Right.
I mean, we're just not gonna try to get it all in one contract. And what were the wages? Were they,
it was the 4 and 6, correct?
and was there anything else that was on there?
Just some language changes and corrections we made.
And what was that first 3 years, 5 years?
To,
2-year contract.
So
Oh.
the, for the first level of increase,
So
is that
there's-
in your first?
Yeah, there's 7 steps total. The first 3 get the 4%.
Yeah.
And 4 get the 6%.
And then we incorporated some side letters of agreement that happened during the last term regarding new hires and training and things, but those were not contentious or controversial at all.
so we have a tentative agreement, they've ratified,
Yeah,
Yes.
so we need to ask the board if they'll ratify it. Anything else on the motion? Not all's in favor,
Aye.
carries. All right, how about our discussion and possible action regarding meeting date and time?
I can go through it if anybody needs me to again. I did ask Claire to pull up the same presentation as last time so we can see why those changes are.
I don't know if we need the
Being
whole
requested,
presentation,
but-
but tell us again why.
Just because some of those times that general government ends up right before a county board meeting, if there's anything that comes out of this committee that would need an amendment to an agenda, there is no time to do that. Moving this to the second Wednesday would always give time. Also, I incorporated those future hopeful changes to the rules of order, of course, pending board approval, to shorten that agenda period. Because right now, the county board agenda is typically going out before some of the committees have met, or sometimes even if they're, before their agendas are even out. Hard to pull items for an agenda when the other agendas aren't out yet. So all those changes incorporated hopefully
So
come
right
next
now,
year.
we're doing the third Tuesday?
Second Wednesday.
No, what are we doing right now?
Oh, right now you're second Tuesday, second Monday. I don't know what day it is.
So
Russ.
how is this gonna help you by moving it 2 days later?
Because right now, sometimes the second Monday falls the day before county board, if depending on when the first day of the month is.
And the,
Changing it to the second Wednesday, it'll always be a week before. It'll always be the week before.
or we could be after,
No,
No,
Never
it'll
be
always
after.
be
before county board,
4 days before county board, 4 days. Tuesday, Monday,
and 4 days is enough for you?
yes.
And no one else meets on a Wednesday, the second
ES
Wednesday?
does first and third, not the second. And they're trying to get it down to just the first Wednesday, but
And I think that someone said that that may work if we could move the meeting. to 8:30
Supervisor
in the
Ruck
morning.
would prefer it be at 8:30, and that's, I'm fine with that, but that also would maybe it's before general government,
Sorry.
so we could move it to the end of general government.
Boy, keep me posted.
So is this does it work for everybody, make it work? And when would we start this?
January, so next month. Just to keep all the calendars, we do them all at the same time, get it all done for the year.
So January meeting will be in what?
Second Wednesday at
Second.
8:30.
Second Wednesday.
And I think we can, we schedule our own meetings, don't we? As long as we're not conflicting with another committee. So we don't need to vote on it or do anything, just we have
Like in the past.
consensus, we change our meeting. All right, we'll try it until you want to change back. again. To where we
You
were.
got it.
All right, so the second Wednesday at 8:30 will be the new general government committee.
Change that right now.
All right, how about we're gonna do some policy review. January, we're gonna do personnel. Are we doing all these in January, the financial, IT?
Looking at February for those.
Okay,
January.
yep, we says February.
Yep, we want to get the.
So just
personnel-
personnel in January.
Yes, we want to get it through Polk council and through the directors and then bring it to committee.
And then the financial and IT in February.
Yes.
Anybody want to comment or are we moving on?
No. Do whatever comes up.
So, meeting in February. If there's no meeting in February, we just push it out.
I'm whispering.
Then if the board decides not to meet in February or the committee decides not to meet in February, we'll just move it to March.
Yeah,
It's still up to the committees.
Correct.
so besides the personnel policy, are we gonna have anything else for our January meeting? I mean, I don't know that we need to gather to spend a half an hour on personnel policy and. Is that something we could do in March? The personnel, financial and IT?
But one of the concerns is backing up into where you guys are going to be making recommendations to the next county board as far as rules of order. That might take up a lot of time in March. But if you don't mind a longer meeting, would be fine.
Right now on your work plan for January is the consideration adoption of compensation for elected officials.
So that's gonna be on the agenda for the next meeting for January. And then the personnel policy. Can we make up anything else?
Then it'd be the, if ready, then it'd be the personnel policy also.
Anything else?
We have the minor matter of auctioning off a county-owned property that has been discussed for a long time, and we finally got it through probate, and we were gonna do that early in the year.
Is it that Deer Park property?
Does that come to this committee?
It would because it wasn't taken by tax deeds, so it's the county property, county assets.
So we could have that. We're actually not on our subject matters, but we kind of are. I wouldn't say we are.
We're trying to plan those things.
We're trying to plan whether we need a meeting in
on number
January. If
13,
all we're
right?
gonna have is a personnel policy, it doesn't. But if we have a few things,
So
then we probably want to try out the second Wednesday at 8:30.
That's true.
See how that.
early in the year, I also, well, the general government director presents a cash flow analysis to this body.
So it sounds like we should probably have the meeting in January.
You know, to keep things moving. And then we're gonna have, what did you say, the rules of order? We're gonna have that on the agenda or?
In March, that could keep us busy in March, she said.
Oh, it's not so much. Well, we do it, we have the elected officials.
Well, because are we trying to finalize like the rules of order recommendations in March, considering April's
Yeah,
the next board?
yeah, because this board would make a recommendation to the future board on any potential change.
I see in our work plan, we have no meeting for February, but that's not been decided yet, has it?
I think that's
No.
just typical, right?
I've just pulled 2023's because we didn't have one in February and just put it on here. So if you want me to change that or add or whatever, I can.
Sounds like we very well might have things for.
Well, if we do, we'll definitely have a meeting, but typically, I mean, so many people are gone in February that we can't even hardly get a quorum. We'll see. In January, we'll see what we have for February.
I'm not running off anywhere warm.
No. All right, how about our work plan? Anything we need to update or review on the work plan? We're good on the work plan?
Stick to develop next year's.
Well, I think we just we add to it if we get something,
Mhm.
I think. but-
Great.
All right, we've already talked about subject matters for. Is our meeting January 8th? Is that the Wednesday?
I think it's the. Just looked at it,
10th.
Yep.
10.
All right, because this is 8th on here, so it'll be the 10th.
I
If
think,
there are, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think just to be aware of, I don't think we need to put it on as a subject matter, but last week there was a bill passed that requires schools to require 1 semester of personal finance education for students to graduate. So what that could mean, every school that I know of around here already requires that. But if we have any that don't require it, that could mean that they're gonna have some hiring efforts and training efforts and things like that. So not that it's directly connected to us, but schools might be adding another position, course, what have you. But overall, seems like a good thing, financial literacy for more people.
You're considering, are you saying we should consider, we do at the county board, have a little
Take a course.
on personal finance?
We do adult education,
Well,
for
we're
sure.
kind of having it coming up as far as how you're getting paid, so.
All right, well, if anyone has anything they want to get on the agenda, get hold of me, Shavana, I mean, Malia, somebody, and try to get it on. All right, we got one item to go.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll stand adjourned at 9:42.